You're listening to Breaking Big, a show all about working in the entertainment industry. I'm your host, Erin Neumeyer. We are proud to be supported by Filmcraft LA and Hoo Ha Ha. In fact, we are featured in the Podcast We Love section of the Hoo Ha Ha app. You can also watch our show as a live stream on YouTube and Facebook, and if you want to see or listen later, it'll also be on Spotify. It's a great show, even if you're in listen-only mode, and you can subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for joining us. This is the one with Colleen Haley. Colleen was born in Arkansas. Then she moved all over the world, but went back to Arkansas to begin her journey in the film industry, ultimately moving to Los Angeles. She started at the bottom as a production assistant and worked her way up to Steadicam Operator and will soon be an ARRI Trinity 1 operator, which is an amazing new kind of Steadicam. We'll talk more about that later. She's worked on TV shows, music videos, over 40 films from shorts to features like Mud with Mathew McConahaughey and Lucky with Harry Dean Stanton and David Lynch. She's a supporter of the writer's strike, so she's putting her free time during this work stoppage to hone her skills on the Trinity. Welcome to the show, Colleen. Hey, and welcome.
Hi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Wow, that's quite a list of experiences you've had there.
Thank you. It's been an adventure.
Yeah. So how did you get into the film industry?
I kind of stumbled into the film industry. I did a lot of theater in high school and met a DP at a Arkansas film festival and just kind of shook his hand and said, "I'll work on anything you're working on." And he chuckled at me and I said, "No, really, free labor," and proceeded to make shorts with him, help him with shorts for a summer, and then interned at a production company, and it just kind of snowballed from there. I worked on anything that I could get on in Arkansas for a while.
That's so cool. You don't really think about Arkansas as being, the place to get your film degree, So that's cool. What kind of projects were you working on there?
Mostly shorts, but also commercials. But I did actually go to school in Philadelphia, so it was only on school breaks that I was able to work in Arkansas.
Yeah, so more of like it's the feet on the ground education, not the academic one.
Yeah, definitely.
Very cool. So, so you met a DP, and before you really got to know him, did you understand the difference, like all the different roles on a film set, or were you already drawn to camera, like were you a photographer before or something?
No, actually. And my experience with him he was very, very talented. His name's Gabe Mahan, and I am naturally drawn to knowledge in general. And so for a while, I didn't know if I was interested in camera or specifically, or I was just drawn to the person that I thought I could learn the most from in that specific environment. So I took about a year jumping around into other departments, and then came back to camera and realized that I was right on the first round.
That's great. How lucky. We have a couple photos.
So this is me operating Steadicam. I actually never operated Steadicam in Arkansas. I only started doing that once I came out to LA. But basically what's happening in the photo is I'm filming a singer who's at a piano, and the Steadicam is a technical tool that stabilizes camera movement by attaching the camera to your body. There's a vest, and then it's connected with an arm, and then the camera's placed on a sled at the top, and at the bottom you have power and a monitor so you can see what you're doing. And so in this specific photo, you can see me filming both the piano and the singer with the Steadicam, and it's showing one of the advantages, which is also a range of movement. The camera's above my head, which I would not have been able to do handheld.
That's really cool. So it looks like it's heavy.
It is heavy. It's much heavier than just a camera. I do also operate handheld, so I know the difference. But you're carrying not only the weight of the camera, but additional power to power the sled, as well as the weight of the arm, the sled, and the vest. So whatever heavy rig you have, which I have flown a Venice, which is a very one of the heavier cameras out right now, along with a teleprompter, which is a large collection in and of itself. And you add, in addition to that, the weight of the rig.
Yes. Oh, here, I want to show the next picture here. So here's another view of you with, this is a different shoot, yeah?
It's actually the same shoot.
Oh, okay. So it looks like sometimes you have to crouch down, sometimes you're standing up. I suppose it depends on what type of camera is on there, right? Because some cameras are lighter, like isn't there like the Alexa Mini? Which
the Alexa Mini is a very lovely light camera to work with. The weight of the camera shouldn't affect the magnitude of the tool or the range of the tool. So in theory, it doesn't matter how heavy something is. I should be able to move it with the same ease, and it takes out the same move. It smooths the same amount in the movement. It's just that I'm carrying more weight on me, and it will affect how long the stretches that I can use it for.
A lot of people probably aren't going to ever have the opportunity to run a Steadicam. I like how you called it flying, like flying the camera. It's like you're a camera pilot.
Yeah.
So and I think that really does a good job of describing the feeling, because it kind of gives that gliding motion. Mm-hmm. A long time ago, I worked on this show. It was called Las Vegas. I don't know if you remember it. It was a while ago. It had like James Caan and I think Josh Duhamel might have been in it. I'm not sure. But I was going to say, like, they were, like, they had this cool thing where everybody would freeze. And then the person with the Steadicam would kind of like run through the thing. And it definitely was kind of like this flying thing. And it gave, I mean, we were holding as still as we could, but obviously it would give this, like, this look of everyone, like kind of like you were traveling through time really quickly. You know, because you could like zoom up to the next action, and then the camera would stop, and then the people would just start up just like they had always been. You know, it was really cool, and that was my first time really seeing the power of the Steadicam. And then after that, I bought this little handheld thing. It's like a handheld gimbal. But it was so awkward. I mean, I couldn't get it to balance, and I couldn't control the focus, and you know, it was just like this loose. I don't know. Do you know what that's called? Is it called a gimbal?
Yeah, it is. You nailed it. It's called a gimbal. Most of them are made by DJI Ronin for smaller rigs. But yeah, I would say that most people feel the Steadicam is equally as unwieldy. It is definitely a tool that you have to learn how to work with. But it's all about just training your body, training with the rig in order to make it do what you want it to do.
Yeah, the thing was completely out of control. I had no idea. And I was trying to do this like short film festival competition thing. And
that's so stressful to try to learn a new tool during that.
Oh my gosh. And when it was just me and a couple friends, so it was a little bit lower stress than if I had like said, oh, I know how to do this. But it was just like, it would just float around. So if you like it was very low rent equipment, not at all, I'm sure what you're up to with what you've got going on. So, so when you first got into it then, you weren't doing Steadicam right out of the gate, right?
Correct. It took me moving out to LA in order to really, I worked on a feature in Arkansas where there was a Steadicam, and I immediately knew I wanted to do this. And that was actually the first time I felt the difference of being a woman, because the guy who came on to work this tool was like 5'6", maybe 5'7". I'm 5'11". I'm not a small person. And I mentioned, I'm a PA at this time, unpaid intern technically. And I mentioned that I wanted to learn Steadicam. And both the DP and the AD who had worked in Los Angeles both said, oh, you can't do that. Like only linebackers do the Steadicam. It's all very muscular men. And it took me coming out to Los Angeles and actually getting in touch with Steadicam operators out here before I felt welcomed to try it. I spent probably 4 or 5 years expressing interest and always being told no, which sounds so ludicrous now that I look back on it. But I'm talking about something theoretical. I was asking people questions about something that I had no personal experience with. So I let those no's get to me a lot more than if I'd had access to it. And I have to thank actually Damien Church, who was a Steadicam operator on a feature that I worked on out in Los Angeles. And I asked him one too many questions over the course of 3 or 4 days that we were working together. I was the digital loader, and he was a Steadicam operator. And after one too many questions, he whips to me and kind of goes, "You're interested in Steadicam?" And I said, "Yeah." No, kind of stumbling, like mumbling. And within a day, between setups, I came out to change mags, and he said, "Hey, you want to put it on?" And I put it on and immediately just started floating around the set, having a blast. And by the time I got home, I had signed up for the Tiffin workshop in order to learn it. So just his kindness to give me access to the tool to try it gave me all the confidence I needed to pursue it. And that's basically been the welcoming I have felt from the Steadicam community in general. It is a very supportive community, incredibly supportive, optimistic. Everybody's wanting everybody else to thrive. The more someone else is thriving, the better Steadicam as a whole looks. So it's been a wonderful experience.
Isn't that amazing how it really only takes just one person really to does. Just kind of be like, to notice, you know what I mean? I think a lot of times we're all in our own head about what we're doing or what we're working on. And if you just like kind of pay attention, be a little bit observant, and then offer just a small something, like it probably didn't take much for him to offer that to you. And look, it changed your whole life.
Yeah. And he definitely had no idea when he was doing that, the magnitude of the impact it would have on me, the entire trajectory of my career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of time we don't really realize even how you treat the person in like the checkout lane or in the toll booth. My brother used to live in New York, and he would, be going, back and forth, I think to Hoboken or something. And I remember I was in the car with him, and you're only having this interaction with this person for like 15 seconds. You're throwing some change in there, and he always, every single time would be like, "Hey, how are you? How's your day going? Have a good one." Like he just always made sure to do that. And it's because he knew that one positive interaction was going to make their day, because so many people just, went by them and ignored them. Like they're not a person or something,
or worse, were rude.
Or they could be rude. Yes. It's like, no, thank you. But I think that's so great. And we all have opportunities like that, to help each other out. So I just think that's wonderful that he did that. That's so great. So were there any other moments coming up where you found that, being a woman Steadicam operator was either like a benefit or like difficult, like with the weight? I guess where I was going with this was I've tried to hold camera a few times, not a Steadicam, but just like getting a shoulder rig, because a lot of the things I shoot are like pretty low budget with my DSLR camera or something. But it's like you have this thing, and it seems like it's not so going to be so heavy, but because you're like your arms, I don't know if you can see my arms, they're out in front of you. They're just out in front of you. It's like when you're raising your hand in class, and you've got your hand up for a little bit, and you're like, "Dang, my arm's heavy." I was dying. I'm just like dying holding this thing. So I just wonder what that's like for you. I mean, do you have to do like extra, weightlifting or Pilates or something?
I definitely work out a lot. It has been a good inspiration to keep myself in shape. I think it's a good thing to keep me accountable on something that I should be doing anyway. But yeah, it's amazing how it's basically weightlifting. You're doing all of your normal activities with a weight on your shoulder, and you're using your body to manipulate this tool into the right position in order to get the frame that you want. Maybe that means squatting. Maybe that means going from your knees on the ground up to standing. this is for handheld. For Steadicam, I do specific exercises mostly to strengthen my back, and then also to strengthen my abs to support my back, because I think that my back is probably what takes it the most in the Steadicam. In terms of your other question was differences being a woman. When I first started in Steadicam, I was significantly smaller than I am now in terms of weight, although I was in much better shape. And it's been interesting watching the difference in how I'm treated. It was kind of a mental trip to have people treat me when I was at my strongest as if I was the most fragile. That was frustrating and ironic now that I weigh a bit more, both healthy weights, both very healthy weights, but ironic now I'm treated as if I can do a lot more when I actually was in better shape then. The other differences being a woman, I would say I do feel like I have to prove myself a little bit more, and there's kind of a double standard, I would say, in terms of behavior as a Steadicam operator. I think that men have a lot more latitude to ask for breaks, ask for tools that they need, whereas those same requests coming from a woman can be written off as you being too weak to do the job, rather than the job being a difficult thing for any human. And then on the reverse, the easier you make it look, it also gives a certain type of the population the confidence of, oh, well, if she can do it, then it must not be that hard. So I think that it does definitely play in. It is a factor. But in the same ways that it's a disadvantage, there is an advantage to it. I just worked the Billboard Women in Music Awards for the second year in a row. And
wow,
I think,
that's so cool.
Thank you. It was fun. It was a really great experience. But I do think that I probably got that door open for me because I am a woman operating, and it's a female awards show for music. But I do think that they probably were looking to fill with more women, and that I can admit that may be why the door was open for me, but it's all about what you do when you walk through the door.
So when you are preparing for a job, is it any different when you're doing Steadicam operation versus, handheld or just camera op? I know in a lot of cases, the DP is also the camera op. So I don't know. It seems like you work on a lot of high-end projects where those are separate jobs. So I'm not sure how different your prep is and how you work with the, production team.
Yeah, there are a couple differences. First, addressing the type of jobs I work as a Steadicam, because it's a specialized instrument. Even if it's a smaller project where the DP is operating, they may call me in only to do the Steadicam operating, because that's something that somebody is not qualified to do unless they're trained in it. They could try to rent it somewhere. There may be places to rent one. I'm not aware of any places, but generally I have heard bad stories of people trying to put it on without training with it, and then it not doing what they want it to do. In terms of regular operating or handheld, usually I'm working on multi-camera shoots, and in that situation, generally the DP will be behind a monitor monitoring both cameras, and then also the lighting and discussing with the director. So there may be multiple operators, or the DP may be operating the other camera and I'm just the additional camera.
Mm-hmm. So what does prep look like for that? Because I know if you're the DP, you're sitting there with the director, maybe the first AD is making all the shot list up, and then you guys collaborate together and decide who's going to, take the lead on what shot. But how are you involved in any of the planning process, or are you more like a piece of equipment that gets operated?
Yeah, I'm definitely much more like a piece of equipment.
Not to dehumanize you or anything there.
The shot, all of the prep work before is going to be worked out by either the DP or DP and the director. And so they're going to have the shot list, and I kind of come in and execute. And so that's actually one of the reasons why I love Steadicam so much is because there's very few positions that you get to come in and have a bit of creative input on the day when you're really only working for a day. In order to get that kind of influence into the final shot, you have to be much higher up generally. And so it's really just a treat. I think it's the best job on set. As a regular operator, as a handheld operator, I can basically just show up and be ready to execute. In terms of prep for Steadicam, I mostly am asking technical questions, like what kind of camera we'll have, what frame rates we'll be shooting, the scope of the shots so that I make sure that the Steadicam is the tool to do it and that we're going to be prepared. I do ask a bit more, especially on lower budget shoots, about the time allotted for the shot, especially if it's like an extensive oneer. I've been in situations where they haven't planned enough time in the day, or they haven't planned enough time to transfer camera to Steadicam. And then I'll also ask questions like, is there going to be rain? Do I need to, like, is there going to be fake rain? Will I need to prepare for water? Things like that. It's mostly questions about the tool and making sure that I have everything on the day.
Mm-hmm. No, those are all great questions. And I understand what you're saying because I've worked on a couple different, capacities on set. And sometimes it's just sort of nice to show up and just do your job. Like there isn't a lot of prep, although I'm sure, do you own your own Steadicam? I do. So you have to remember everything that you need. You don't just show up to set and they have it there for you. But at the same time, it's like, that's really it. You got a checklist, you go over, you're good, you show up, you're ready to go. Yeah. There's not necessarily homework for individual jobs. For the most part, I show up with my tool and myself, and then I'm able to execute and go home. And while still getting more creative input than when I was an assistant. Right. So I wanted to dive in just a tiny bit on the details of becoming a Steadicam operator for anybody that's listening that maybe has gotten excited by seeing you on the show and maybe they think they want to give this a try. Like how many hours of training do you think it took? And are there levels or are there places that do Steadicam training? Just kind of walk us through, like if you were starting out right now, what would you do? I would absolutely recommend talking to every Steadicam operator that you come in contact with. It's a very supportive community. They've been wonderful welcoming me in. I also took the Tiffin Steadicam workshop. I called it Steadicamp because it was a week, I think, of just practicing Steadicam with a bunch of really talented operators. And then they brought out other tools that you can use with Steadicam. Like we did crane walk-offs, we did car mounts, we did, I can't remember the name of it, segways. We did steady segways. Just a whole bunch of other tools. Do you mean Segway? I'm sorry, I have to go back. Do you mean Segway like when I think Segway? Yeah, like the two wheels that you stand and just kind of lean. It's so like it can be a very useful tool. Just like I'm trying to imagine. First of all, I've never been on a Segway, so I don't know how hard they are to operate. But like I can't imagine being on the Segway and then also. It's the kind that there's handlebars, right? Or are you talking about like the ones that are like skateboards? It's the normal ones have handlebars, but when you do it with Steadicam, they're adapted to have two things that you just kind of clamp with your legs. Oh. And then steering is basically with your pelvis. You kind of imagine, like, it's good to imagine that you're at the front of a ship,
just kind of like, and wherever you lean, the ship is going to go.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh, I'm dying right now. I want to try that. I mean, I'm sure I'd injure myself immediately, but it seems really fun.
It actually was really fun. It's one of the reasons that I call it Steadicam, because it felt like Disneyland for operators.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it also just reminded me a little bit of riding on a horse. Like, I don't know if you've done any horseback riding, but they say like where you turn, like the horse can feel every little move you make. So if you turn your head to the, if you turn your head to the left, it feels you do that and knows you want to go left. It's so amazing. Yeah. It kind of sounds like, you're one with Segway.
Yeah, definitely. Which is also kind of what you are trying to make the Steadicam do. You want to be one with your Steadicam. It's kind of magical because your micro movements for the Steadicam can influence a lot of where the Steadicam wants to move. So if you're leaning forward, the Steadicam's going to want to go away from you. If you're leaning back, it's going to want to come towards you. And so you want to learn how to carry your body in a way where the Steadicam is naturally going where you want it to go, rather than having to fight against what the Steadicam is trying to do.
So is it a gyroscope or something? Like, how does it stay floating out in front of you?
There's springs in the arm. It's spring loaded so that it basically takes out the movement of your body and keeps the Steadicam sled at a specific height due to tension, and that's what allows it to kind of glide.
Okay, I was thinking of it like hydraulics or something, but it's just kind of reducing your effect that you're having on the camera.
Yeah. In theory, you should be able to kind of jump next to it and the camera basically stays
still. And then when, with the vests, so I've put on, I think it's called I don't know if it's called a Ronin. It's the one where it almost looks like a fishing hook is kind of up over your head. And then there's you just kind of like an easy rig. There we go.
Oh, no. Yeah. So that's a easy rig would be for handheld. For a Ronin.
Yeah. For a handheld.
A ready rig, which has 2 points of contact.
Okay. So I've had on that contraption. It gets kind of hot, actually. For me, it did. But, and it seemed like some of them are built maybe for a guy. Like, do they have vests that are like, have room for a bosom or like, are they clamped down for a smaller waist or something? Like when you would go hiking, you could buy a woman's backpack that had, like it cinched more, or it wasn't quite as tall, or there's just like different things that you can do to make something like that, fit a woman's frame better. And then I find that when I'm wearing that versus, the old school, like one size fits all backpack, I can go a lot farther. I can carry it a lot farther. I don't get like the neck strain and all that kind of stuff. So I was looking at when I was trying to figure out if maybe I wanted the easy rig thing. I was looking to see if I could find one that would be, something I could do on my little, because like I'm usually like the one-man band, I've got like the cymbals going and the shakers on my hand, and then I'm trying to direct the scene, and so I'm always like trying to figure out some way to attach more, like to be a little cyborg,
The boom mic's just coming out of your shoulder.
Yeah, exactly. It's really hard to have one eye watching the levels on the sound and the other eye on the camera. Like I haven't figured out how to get chameleon eyeballs yet, so.
That would be very entertaining.
That's what I need, though. That's what I need. And I need one ear to listen to one thing and one ear for something else. So.
The vest that I use was invented by Chris Fawcett, who actually was at the Tiffin workshop that I took. He's a magical man. He's a Steadicam operator and invented this vest specifically to go in alignment with ergonomics. So he studies the Alexander technique, which is a style of movement that encapsulates all movement, and invented the exo vest not only for men but also to accommodate women. So it's much airier than the other vest options. It's less fabric physically on your body, and funny story. I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, but he actually went around to all of his female friends, or a lot of his female friends, and asked them to measure the distance between their breasts so that he could appropriately size the posts that went down the front so that it would be comfortable for women to use.
I don't think that it's wrong at all that he went around and asked people for that, because like that's what you need to do. You need to get data. This is the problem that I have. Like, I love that it's a guy that made this. At first I was like, I thought you were going to say like a female name who designed the first, Steadicam vest that would work for women. But you need like men, when they're designing things, they need to think about everybody that's going to use it, not just men. And so I actually love that it's a guy, and I love that he didn't just try to guess. He got measurements and he figured stuff out, and he looked at all different body types, because that's what good design is. It's like really investigating and solving a problem. So kudos to that person. I'm very impressed with them, and more of that, please.
Thank you, Chris Fawcett.
So I wanted to actually show I think you were just talking about your training. So I'm going to show a couple more pictures here real quick. So I think that you said this was you at your Tiffin training. And like, was this expensive?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more, like, how do people get involved in this?
It definitely was expensive. But because there isn't really access to Steadicam outside of knowing someone who has a Steadicam, there's no real way to train on it without doing something like this. There are a bunch of practice sessions with other Steadicam operators, but even that, you probably need to buy your own vest. So I chose to do this because it was an opportunity to really get a good dose of experience with it before I made the investment and bought one myself. You can also, there's a gentleman named Greg Smith who has some video lessons that are cheaper that you can watch, but you still are going to need access to a Steadicam. So you could watch that and then practice with a friend, but it is a high bar of access for the community to have access. And so that's, while the Tiffin workshop is expensive, something like that bigger investment is good to have a sustained experience with it. And I will say that having it on your body for the number of hours that we did for a week straight, I don't know that I have improved that rapidly at any other point in my career.
It's worth it. It sounds like if you are really serious about it, then you're setting yourself apart, because not everybody can operate a Steadicam. And so when people are out there looking for that person, they only have, the trained people to choose from. So I think, that's great.
And not only is it a good resource in order to learn how to use the tool of Steadicam, but they also really taught me a lot about the art of operating in general. So it's not just about learning a tool, they're teaching you how to speak the language of camera at the same time, which is one of the main reasons that I was drawn to camera in the first place. I think that it has a lot of maybe crossover with typography. Like, we all can look at a sign and go, oh, that's from the 50s, but we may not be able to exactly describe why it's from the 50s, and we may not be able to create one ourselves. So camera movement and film in general is kind of this language that we all know how to speak. We all know that a montage means time's passing, but we can all read it. It's a language that we all know how to read and interpret, but you have to work to learn how to speak it. And so I found the workshop really valuable.
So tell us about this photo.
This was also at the Tiffin workshop. This is a car mount. So we've mounted, instead of having the Steadicam directly connected to me, we've connected it directly to a car. In this case, I think we took off the tire that's normally on the back of this vehicle and then mounted it with a Garfield mount directly to the vehicle. And so I am able to use the speed of the car to keep up with the bike, who's our talent in this shot, and got to practice, the start and stops, the acceleration and deceleration. It was just another example of getting to do really complicated shots at this workshop that I would have taken a lot longer in my career to get access to.
Are you wearing like a seatbelt or something, or a harness or something to protect you in the back of the car, or?
We never went on public streets for this. We were only driving around in an empty parking lot. So we didn't have the same safety precautions that we would have in other situations, which I'm always a big proponent for safety. There's a lot of times that camera operators are asked to do things that are unsafe. And it's one of the reasons why the union is so valuable, because they have created guidelines of what is safe. There's, as the film industry is kind of run and gun, and when left to its own devices, it's all about getting the shot. And that's never worth it at the cost of someone's life or their physical well-being or even their career. And so,
yeah, I was telling you before we started the interview that I just came across this crazy montage of camera operators doing insanely dangerous things. And the caption under it was like, camera operators need to get paid more money. And then like I wrote on there and I was like, please don't think this is normal. You should never be like almost hit by a car or like trailing along the side of a metro, or like you should never do that. Like, I was like, oh my God. It's not worth it. Get the shot another way.
Yeah, get the shot another way, or take the time to do it safely.
Yeah, well, in the montage, they actually had a video from this show called Extraction. It was like a Netflix show. It had Chris Hemsworth in it, and he was doing this whole like city scene where he's like leaping off of buildings and then in a car and then whatever. But I watched that whole behind the scenes thing, and those people are like in a safety harness on the back of this thing, and there's like 5 other people watching to make sure that everything is as safe as it can possibly be. Obviously, there's always a little risk, but
minimizing risk is the name of the game.
Minimize risk. Yes, I like that. So now, how long have you been at the Steadicam operation game?
I think I took that workshop in 2017. So it's been a while, but I have not been full-time Steadicam operating that entire time. I definitely had some headwinds, if you will, in terms of launching full-time. There was a global pandemic and a concussion somewhere in there.
Oh, no.
So I've launched full-time Steadicam 3 separate times. I did go back to ACing during the pandemic just to get a little more work, and was very grateful for it. But
did you say ACing? Do you mean like assistant camera?
Assistant camera, yeah. But yeah,
I've everything sounds like it has pilot names, like and I think you were just saying ACing, but it sounded like like World War II pilots were like aces.
Yeah, I like that, especially in the theme of flying Steadicam.
Yeah, I think it should be acing. I love that.
Yeah, but yeah, I've been doing it for an extended period of time, and but I'd say all in all, I think probably 3 to 4 years in terms of full-time working spread out.
And I know some things are still filming, things that don't require rewrites, I guess, or like any on-set writers are maybe still filming right now. So do you anticipate being busy? Oh, commercials. Yeah, commercials. Yeah, that's true. I've seen an uptick actually in some commercial auditions just the last couple weeks. I was like, wait a minute, somebody writes these. It's just not protected in the guild. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's see here. I have this cool video I want to show, and it's of your work. That was pretty cool. I mean, there's so many different kinds of shots in there. And it reminded me of seeing, like people operating Steadicam where, you're doing so much moving and yet you still got to keep your eye on the monitor. And then there's things happening around you, like you're on that stage with the musicians, or you're following the gal with the trumpet down the street, or, just being aware of your surroundings. So do you have somebody there like guiding you in those situations, or like how are you possibly doing all of the things? And are you also pulling focus, or do you have someone else doing that part? I mean,
I do have someone else pulling focus. There are Steadicam operators, particularly for live broadcasts, that will pull their own focus. They are gods among men. That is an entire another level of concentration and not something I've ever had to do, thankfully. But in terms of having someone there with you, there's usually a grip that will, and that's the grip position on set, not just like somebody's grip. There's usually a person who's guiding me and making sure I don't fall down, making sure other people get out of my way. That's not always available on smaller shoots. Sometimes it's someone who's never done it before. And so that's all just a part of the navigation of communicating with the person who's guiding you to make sure that they're guiding you in a way that works without messing up the shot. But yeah, it's kind of amazing. It's almost meditative how you just zone in on the image and you can kind of see things through your peripheral. And sometimes I will, if I'm coming up on a curb, maybe I'll like feel it with my foot as I'm coming up to it in order to step off. But one of the cool things about Steadicam is that because it's attached to you, it actually moves the center of gravity from your body outside of your body, in between you and the camera. So as long as you don't let the Steadicam get too far away from you, it can also kind of help catch you if you stumble. Because literally it's a wild experience to have your center of gravity outside of you. So even though it's not a person with their feet on the ground, it is kind of similar to having your arm linked with someone else. Like if you stumble a little, there's something on your side that is balancing that. You can also, there's this really cool trick of if you're stepping up on a stage, you kind of launch the Steadicam in front of you, it will help pull you up. So like going upstairs can be a little less hard to do each individual step because you're already partially there. And in the same, I have done shots going backwards upstairs, and that's kind of a similar, you've got the grip behind you just kind of pulling you up, and between the person behind you and the camera in front of you, it's almost just like twinkle toes making it up the stairwell.
That's cool. I mean, I never thought it looks so challenging to me watching all of those things happening. And I know now you're getting trained on the newest version of the ARRI Trinity. I know in the opening I said ARRI. I did talk to the people at ARRI. I was there for my own training. And the guy said that, in Germany they say it one way, in America they say it somewhere else. So, technically you're fine either way. But I know the preferred way is saying ARRI. It sounds kind of fancy. But I think I said it was a new Steadicam, and really what I meant was it was new to me because I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, the Trinity has been around. It's a completely different setup from Steadicam, but with similar function. But it has a much wider breadth of movement that's possible with it. Mm-hmm. So with a Steadicam, because it's in a staff position, you're limited. You have high mode or low mode. You're limited how high to like kind of mid you can go, or you can flip it upside down. You can go from mid to the ground, but there's not really the option to go from really low all the way really high.
Mm-hmm. So in that case, you'd have to have like a crane, right?
Exactly.
Okay. or a drone these days.
Yeah, that would also work. It also, because it is locked this way, it is the operator's responsibility to keep it level, because if you tilt the staff, the whole image is going to tilt. And basically Trinity, instead of being a staff, it can go from a staff to kind of a lance position. Sorry, I'm trying to get my arm into the image. It can go into a lance position, which means that it can go from really low all the way high. You can go from the ground at somebody's feet all the way up to somebody's head. And that also then means you have more movement capacity spatially, or different movement capacity, I should say. You could go through a car window. You can go, I worked with another Niels Lindelin, who's a good friend of mine and one of my mentors with the Trinity. I worked on a shoot with him where he took the Trinity into a CAT scan machine, an MRI machine, and then came out. So that's something that wouldn't be possible with a Steadicam because it has to be vertical. Like there's not enough room for the tool in that space.
Yeah, I thought that people would think it was cool to see it in action. So here's a clip from ARRI's website. Isn't that cool?
That is really cool.
I mean, it looks like something like totally space age, and I want one, even though I have no idea how to use it.
Well, you could learn. So this is actually the Trinity 2. I'm going to be buying a used Trinity 1, which has all of the difference in range capacity that I mentioned before. The difference between a Trinity 1 and a Trinity 2 is specifically that 360 degrees capability of rotating within the Trinity itself, for the camera to rotate within the Trinity itself. The Trinity 1, I believe, can go up to 90 degrees rotation. And so the big improvement with the 2 is that it can go 360.
I mean, look, I don't know how to use it, and I'm like totally geeking out over that video.
It's like, really, it is astounding how fun it is. I've just really gotten started on it, and I just am like a kid in a candy shop. It's just amazing.
So can I ask, are they insanely expensive?
I'm buying mine used. So, and because I already operate Steadicam, I have the vest and the arm already. So it's a significantly smaller investment than it is for someone getting into it fresh or someone who's buying it new. But yeah, it's
an investment.
A very nice car.
Yeah, I was trying to upgrade from my DSLR. You know, I've got this like Lumix S5. It's lovely. Yeah. It does great video. It's got a lot of features, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, maybe I want maybe I want the next thing up. And then like the one that I could afford was like, eh. So, I mean, it's better off. I'm better off with the DSLR for right now because yes, I mean, I think, and I'm going to say the wrong number here, so I probably shouldn't say anything, but I think that the ARRI Alexa is also a very nice car.
Oh yeah. All cameras almost are a car at least. And most of them are a car that's nicer than I will ever buy.
Yeah. So then it doesn't seem so bad to rent. Like I'm always like, when I'm looking to rent something, I'm like, oh my God, this is thousands of dollars, but it's way cheaper and then you don't have to stay up on it. If you're like, I'm sure something like a Steadicam has a longer shelf life, but right now the technology on cameras and things, it's like you blink and the one you have is obsolete. So
yeah, exactly.
So, well, now we are to the part in our show where I like to do little shout outs. So I know we kind of showed some of your pictures already, but you know, it's for me personally, I feel like it's always like a good thing to be grateful and have gratitude and also shine the light on other people that are doing good things. And you did that actually a lot in this episode, but if you have anything else or anyone else that came to mind that you want to mention, this is a good time.
Absolutely. I always have lots of thank yous because I'm incredibly grateful to the entire community that has welcomed me with open arms, but particularly Damien Church, who I mentioned, who was the first person to ever let me try one on, who I haven't really kept up with since then. So he really just doesn't know the magnitude of the impact he's had on me. Charles Pappert who is an incredible Steadicam operator who's been operating for ages. I know he worked on Scrubs. I'm sure there's way more stuff that's also amazing that he's worked on that I'm going to get in trouble for not being able to reference. But he has been a tireless supporter of me from the beginning. Timber Oy, who is a non-binary operator, has answered my questions, no matter how dumb and how small, from the beginning. Since I first got my rig, has done practice sessions with me, has always been supportive. And then most recently, Niels Lindelin, who has been teaching me the Trinity. So it's especially after starting this path with so many no's and discouragement and telling me that I couldn't do it just because of who I was. To have finally broken into the Steadicam community and find out that it was the people who weren't in the community who were telling me no, that anyone who's actually in the community has been incredibly encouraging. It's just, those words of encouragement are gold, and I'm incredibly grateful. And then also Chris Fawcett, who is a magical gem of a human being who designed the ExoVest, and the king of them all, Garrett Brown, who invented the Steadicam. I'm incredibly grateful. What an entrepreneur and engineer to have created this tool that has made a livelihood for all of us.
You probably all have heard by now, the WGA is on strike, and everyone else in the industry is pretty much in support of it, because we know that if there's nothing written, there's nothing for actors to say, there's nothing for Steadicam operators to record. So I just wanted to give a little shout out to the Writers Guild. I'm not in there yet. I hope to be someday, but I definitely support them. And I wanted to show a couple pictures of what's going on out there. And hopefully all of you folks in or out of the industry that might be listening will also show your support. It's really important. So much of the money is going to the production companies, and they're always coming up with new ways to, short other people. And now with the emergence of IA and all these other ways that writers can be taken advantage of, like I'm sure you've heard the word mini room, which is basically just a way to say, we're not going to hire you for the full amount of time. We're just going to hire you for this little mini moment, and then hope that you're happy only getting paid for like a few weeks instead of what would have been like 6 months of a job. So anyway, you can go read more about it, or you can go to the Instagram page here that I'm showing you. This is the WGA's Instagram, so you can follow it, see what's going on there. There's so many great people coming out. You can see there's musicians, and honestly, if you want a good laugh, people are so clever and creative with their signs. I think this is genius. They made these like strike signs that have a blank space, because who better to write the words to go on the strike side than a writer? I think there was one, I'm going to say it was Tom Ellis that was carrying it, but I'm not totally sure. But it said, without the writers, I literally don't know what to say. And I thought that was hilarious and genius. So just kind of shout out to everybody that's raising awareness, because unfortunately you don't know a lot of the writers, right? You might know the people that become showrunners, but some of what they're fighting for right now is actually the ability to become a showrunner, because if you don't hire the writer on through the duration of the show, then they don't ever get to go to set. They don't get to see what's happening. And you will definitely see like a degradation of the quality of shows if you don't give the people that are running these shows those opportunities to get the training and learning. And
it may not affect us now, but it's going to affect the future. It's
yes.
It's the next generation of showrunners that we're cutting off the knees.
Well, Colleen, it was so great having you on the show. I feel like this is really going to give people who have some interest in Steadicam a lot of information, and hopefully you'll see them in a workshop with you sometime soon.
I would love that. Anybody who's interested, please reach out. If I can help anyone else in the way that I've been helpful in the way, I'd be more than grateful for it. It'd be a great opportunity.
It's been so great having you on the show. Just thank you so much for taking your time to come.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. And I'd also like to shout out my parents. A thank you to my parents because I forgot to earlier, but they have also been my champions and cheerleaders and have encouraged me along the entire way and raised me in such a way to never think that I wasn't capable of doing something just because of my gender. So thank you to them. I
love that. I'm a parent, and you're welcome. You're welcome from all parents. I think it's so great. I've been trying to impart that kind of thing on my own kids, and it's hard, I mean, the world, it's a tough world out there. So I love that you had your parents to help you with that. So anyway, well, thanks again for coming on the show, and I guess that wraps it up for this week.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's our show. We hope you loved it. If you did, make sure you're subscribed, tell your friends about it, and why not write us a review? If you know someone that would make a great guest on our show, drop us a line. You can find us on Instagram at ThunderTally, or go to our website, thundertally.com. This show was produced by Bex Francis, edited by me, Erin Neumeyer. The music was performed and written by Dylan Neumeyer. And our sponsor is Filmcraft LA, so make sure you go check them out. This has been a ThunderTally Media production.